On this episode of I'm Not a Lawyer, But the Debrief.
So, were we surprised that the judge did what she did? Not necessarily. We weren't surprised because we'd seen how the judge had moved over the course of the past couple months, and to be honest, we know, and this is my opinion, we're of the opinion that the judge was just kind of fed up with the state because she was able to see that they were operating in a way that really wasn't, in good faith.
If you're not ready, then go ahead and tell me you're not ready.
I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives.
In other words, the car didn't hit him, and he wasn't hit by the car.
I'm not a lawyer, but are y'all keeping up? I'm not a lawyer, but
The Debrief.
hello and welcome to another episode of I'm Not a Lawyer, But
The Debrief.
I am Melanie, aka I'm Not a Lawyer, and I am joined by my co-host.
Goosebay, how y'all doing?
How are you doing?
I'm great.
I have all the emotions and the energy
I know.
because it's been a massive week in the YSL trial. And so to not bury the lead, let me tell you right now that I talked to the Honorable Keith Adams this morning, Attorney Keith Adams, who represented Jeffrey Williams, aka Young Thug. He was co-counsel with Brian Steele, who was also obviously the representation for Jeffrey Williams. So I talked to Keith Adams and I have the interview. We're going to play the interview. It's a phone interview. And so I'm going to play that at the end. But first, I want to go through who took a plea in the YSL trial this week, what they were charged with. We'll play a couple clips from those pleas, and then we'll get into the interview. So here we go.
Can't wait.
Let me pull my notes up so I don't miss anything. Let me pull it up. And we have to start with, again, last week, right? When I was there, because that was the start of some of this unfolding.
Yep.
The last day of normal trial is what we'll call it, was day 150, when Wooney Lee was on the stand and he read from a document in which he said free Quay.
Yep.
And there was two of the attorneys, the attorney for Quamarvius Nichols, as well as Marquavius Huey, they moved for mistrial because of the free Quays. What that did, or what that appeared to do, is open conversations about plea deals back up, because the reality of a mistrial without prejudice means that the state can retry this case, and that's expensive for everybody. For me too, and I'm not there and I'm not a part of this, but it's a lot. And so the idea that they would be starting from scratch, I think it seems to be the case, prompted everybody to re-engage in conversations about a plea deal, the state included, because the Judge Whitaker had been saying since she took the bench, she had been saying, hey, y'all don't want to do no plea deals. Everybody should talk about plea deals. And it was pretty obvious that it had stopped. Those conversations were not happening. And so the fact that this motion for a mistrial happened, it seemed like that opened up the conversations again. And so fast forward to this week, we get the first plea deal. And the first person in this case, there were 6 people who were on this case. So they obviously had these conversations about plea deals. The first person to take is Quamarvius Nichols. He had, and just for context, Quamarvius Nichols had 7 charges in this indictment. The first one being the RICO, which again, we are all clear that everybody had the RICO charge. So he has the RICO charge. He also has count 49, which is the murder charge for Shymel Drinks. There were 2 murder charges in this indictment. It was for Donovan Thomas. That was count 2. Count 49 was for the murder of Shymel Drinks. So Quamarvius Nichols had that. He also had participation in criminal street gang activity, which again is the murder charge. And I just want to break here because I think it's important to point out what a RICO and what gang charges can do. Okay. It can essentially double charge you, right? And so basically what happened is they charged him, and for everybody who had a gang charge, you have an underlying charge, which is the murder. But then you have a gang charge, which is you committed this murder in furtherance of a gang, on behalf of a gang. You participated in gang activity by committing this murder. And so you essentially get two charges for the single
One
crime.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so some of these people who have a number of charges, those are for the same incident, but you can be charged in different ways for that. So he has 49, the murder, 50, the participation in criminal street gang activity. He also has possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. That was for the murder. In the process of committing a murder, you had a possession of a firearm. You're a convicted felon. You're not supposed to. He had possession of firearm by a convicted felon. And then there's a possession of firearm during the commission of a felony. That's also for the murder. So again, you get all these charges. And then he had possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. And this was as a result of a search that was done on Jeffrey Williams' home. Let me say this very clearly, because it's important to make this distinction. Jeffrey Williams' home, Thug, his home was searched twice. Once in 2015, which was illegal. A second time in 2022, which was legal. There are charges in this indictment that have to do with the 2022 search of Young Thug's home. They're not from the 2015. And so this possession charge that I'm talking about for Quamarvius Nichols came from that second search. Okay. There were some firearms that were found in Thug's home. And so everybody there essentially got that charge. So those were the 7 counts that Quamarvius Nichols had. The plea deal that the state offered to him, they agreed to dismiss all of the charges, including his murder charge, as long as he pled guilty to count 1, which is the RICO, and he was sentenced to 20 years to serve 7. So the total sentence is 20 years. 7 of those will be served in jail. The remaining balance is on probation. So that was the plea. I have to say, I think everybody watching was pretty surprised that the murder charge was dropped.
Yes.
And so it makes you question, as a person who is just watching, how and why did you get to the point as the state? Why would we be a year into this trial? And then this far in, you're willing to drop a murder charge of someone. What changed that would result in you agreeing to drop that? You know what I'm saying? Like that I think was really surprising. And to the point I think I made in the last video, the murder was for Shymel Drinks. He has a family. He has people that love and care about him. So how do they feel when they are told that, hey, I'm sure at one point they were told, we got him. We got the person who got your family member. And then the conclusion of this case for Quamarvius Nichols is we're dropping the charge against him. I can't imagine. And those family members come to the courtroom. I can't imagine what that is like as well. But
the state must have realized they couldn't have got a guilty plea.
So this
if they would have took it,
well, and that's it. It makes you wonder what happened. So one of the things that did happen in the plea hearing is that the state goes through what they say would have come out had this trial continued. So they literally say, Your Honor, if we would have continued with this trial, we believe the evidence would show, right? And then they start going through everything. So what they did for Quamarvius Nichols is they went through what they believe happened regarding the death of Shymel Drinks, which I was very interested in, especially knowing now that they dropped this charge. So I want to play the clip of what they say happened to Shymel Drinks. Let me find it and let's listen.
This is on March 14, 2022. During what the state would believe to show an onset of a gang war that really started in 2015 with the death of Donovan Thomas, that carried on into 2022. In February of 2022, a rival gang member by the name of Rayshawn Bennett, also known as YSL Lucci, was stabbed at the Fulton County Jail in February of 2022. Information about that stabbing was made public at early part of March 2022, around March 3rd of 2022. Once that information was released to the public, there was an onset of retaliatory activity that occurred between March 3rd, 2022 and March 16th of 2022. That includes a March 11th homicide of YSL associates Christian McMiller and Darius Ford. It also then included a retaliatory shooting of a YFN associate, and then ultimately it led to a murder of Shamel Drinks, who we believe is a YFN associate. This murder occurred again on March.
I just want to pause a little bit to give you a little bit of context. So what she just set up is the history of what they've been saying, that it was a gang war, and leading up to the murder of Shamel Drinks, there were some YSL associates, according to the state, that were killed. And that even backed into, there was an incident with YFN Lucci. So there's this incident, there's the overall war incident with YFN Lucci, then these YSL associates are killed, and then this Shamel Drinks murder happens. That's what she kind of set up. And so she's about to go into what they say happened regarding this incident. And again, this defendant that we are talking about is Quamarvius Nichols. So you can listen to his name and how she includes it into the story.
2022. Mr. Nichols is seen on surveillance video at that BP gas station, as I just referenced earlier. He was at the gas station with YSL co-conspirator Shannon Stillwell. Mr. Stillwell was driving an Audi vehicle. Mr. Nichols came to that gas station in a Ford Fusion vehicle. You see both of them on camera together. While they are at that gas station, Shamel Drinks approaches that gas station as well. I think unbeknownst to Mr. Drinks, Mr. Stillwell was still in his vehicle, which is the Audi. At some point in time, Mr. Nichols got into his vehicle, the Ford Fusion. Once Mr. Drinks finished his business or finished handling business at that gas station, we know that there is a phone call between occupants of the car that Mr. Stillwell was in and occupants of the car that Mr. Nichols was in. That communication was to the effect of, you need to get on FaceTime. As soon as that conversation ensues, we see Mr. Drinks leave the gas station in his vehicle, and both the car that Mr. Stillwell is driving as well as the car that Mr. Nichols is driving both follow out of the gas station, following behind Mr. Drinks. Mr. Drinks proceeds down the street to the light at Windsor, which is right by I-20 in Windsor. Mr. Drinks is in the far left lane. The car involving with Mr. Stillwell pulls up to the middle lane, and Mr. Nichols' vehicle pulls up to the far right lane. This is all captured on surveillance video and surveillance camera. They are at the light for a moment. Then we see both this car with Mr. Stillwell as well as the car with Mr. Nichols drive through a red light, leaving the car with Mr. Drinks sitting at that light. About 30 minutes later, a Good Samaritan sees that car still sitting there, approaches the vehicle, and Mr. Drinks is now deceased inside of that vehicle. We had know through LPR readers that both Mr. Stillwell's vehicle and the car involving Mr. Nichols drive in the direction of 20 westbound and follow in tandem.
So she essentially lays out, they see him at a gas station, and the other person that she references is Shannon Stillwell, who is still a co-defendant in this case. And so they're in their separate cars. They see Shamel Drinks, which she says is a rival gang member. They essentially follow him. They get to a light, and Quamarvius Nichols, the person whose plea it is in the far lane with the victim in the far left lane, and then Shannon Stillwell, who again is still on trial, is in the middle. And whatever happens, she says it's on video, but obviously what happened is not clear, because then the two cars pull off and Shamel Drinks is left at the light and somebody discovers he's passed away. So even in that description of what happens, maybe what she's getting at is that if the car Quamarvius Nichols is in the far right, and the victim is killed, and he's on the far left, and you never see Nichols get out of the car, then maybe the assumption is that the car in the middle is the one who did it, and that one has Shannon Still in it. So maybe that's the assumption. I think that's what we all can gather from that. But regardless, Nichols accepts this plea. And what was interesting is that his attorney, Bruce Harvey, was very adamant that the only thing that they are pleading to is this RICO charge. And the way that he explained the RICO was really interesting as well. I don't know if I'll be as articulate, but essentially it's a conspiracy between him and another person to violate the act, and drug offenses can be a part of violating the act. And so he was essentially saying, by Nichols having this whatever drug interaction in order to obtain the drug or whatever, that is enough to prove that he conspired with another person. And because this drug offense violates the RICO Act, essentially so they never really own or claim that YSL is a gang. They essentially are able to say, we only plead to this RICO charge because of the drug offenses, and that's it. Nothing else. And so it was really fascinating, really interesting to watch.
That's clever.
It was very, very interesting. The other thing, and I'll see if I can find it so we don't play the whole video. But with each defendant, as they accepted their pleas, their attorneys said different things about their life. It was just really interesting to hear. Let me see if I can find the clip.
are acknowledging, we categorically deny, and that conspiracy that when Mr. Nichols filled out his form, it says 29 plus. He is a birthday boy in a couple of days, and he will be 30. Mr. Nichols, was born and raised in Atlanta, and we're at this point before I have even given my opening statement in this case.
Yes, sir.
I do want the court to know that Mr. Nichols' mother died in prison. His father was shot by the Atlanta police when he was 4 years old. And he was raised by friends and family in the Atlanta area.
And the sentence on count 1 is the sentence that has been negotiated of 20 years to serve 7, with the balance of those years to be served on probation. And that, I don't know if there are any special conditions attached to this that y'all have talked about at all.
There are no negotiated special conditions in those, so there are none as far as I'm concerned.
All right. No. Okay.
So hearing the history of his parents, his mom and his dad being killed, and I think that it just puts it reminds people that these are people and that they have a history and a background. That does not excuse, okay? I'm not saying it's okay to victimize people and terrorize an area. And I'm not even saying that these people are guilty of that, because obviously the state let all the charges off. But what I am saying is remembering that people have different life experiences which draw them and get them to the point that they are at, and everybody doesn't choose the way that you would want them to choose or the way that you would choose. And so it just was a reminder, I think, in hearing that kind of background that he has. And you just hope that any of the people who come out of this trial are able to make decisions that put them in better positions so that they're not in front of Judge Whitaker again, or any judge.
Yeah, his lawyer did his job.
Yeah.
To let us know that about the young man, because I mean, you hear that and you start really thinking, dang, because I had a meal every night.
Exactly.
I had my parents every night. If anything happened, I could run home and tell my parents,
Yeah.
So just that alone, that could have sent me down a whole different path if I didn't have somebody to talk to or I felt safe around. So yeah, but that, like you said, don't excuse anything.
No.
But it does put you like in the mind frame of you don't know what people are going through, man.
Yeah.
I mean, in everyday life, you just don't know what people are going through. So
Yeah.
yeah.
The next person who took a plea was Rodalius Ryan, aka Little Rod. The only count that he had in this indictment was the RICO count, and it was based off of his murder conviction. He was convicted of a murder regarding a boy named Jamari Holmes, and the state for him, they ended up, he pled guilty to the to the RICO, and the plea deal for him was basically time served, essentially. And so he is currently in the process of appealing the murder charge. And so if he appeals this murder charge, and the Supremes grant him a new trial and he is found to be not guilty, he wouldn't have to serve any time for this RICO. That's the way that it was able to work out, that it's kind of like a 1-for-1 situation where he wouldn't have to serve additional time for this RICO if the conviction that he already has is overturned. Hopefully that makes sense.
So you all, this trial has been going on for 150 days, 150 plus days, 54 days. And I can only imagine what's going through everybody's head, but the defendants only imagine the mental fortitude they needed going through that, right? I'm quite sure if they had Magic Mind, it would have been a breeze. You feel me? Because Magic Mind is a mental performance shot. It's been in development for 10 years. It has over 100 iterations to make the formula perfect. And it uses organic mushrooms, okay? It uses the fruity body of the mushroom, which has the highest density of beneficial bioactive compounds. Using Magic Mind myself, I have to book hotels, flights, read contracts because I'm a tour manager, and having Magic Mind in my back pocket helps me sit down at a computer for a long period of time and stay focused to get the job done. All right. There's no risk involved here with Magic Mind. They're so confident in their product. It's 100% refund for 100 days after your order. Okay. And they also, at Magic Mind, they give back to the community. They donate 5 cents to each bottle sold to mental health charities to help the U.S. homeless community. All right. And they're 100% carbon neutral. There's a limited offer you can use now that gets you 48% off your first subscription or 20% off one-time purchases with the code LAWYER20 at checkout. You can claim it at magicmind.com/lawyer20.
Lawyer20.
Now back to the show.
And so I won't even play the clip for that because that's essentially what happened. It was I think everybody who was watching this case, everybody would constantly ask, why is he here? Because his name barely came up. They finally got to it, and it was everybody could see what was happening.
Yeah. Y'all trying to, they brought him along to say, look who he hangs out with.
Yeah.
Which come on, y'all already got the guy for the murder situation. Now you trying to kick him while he down, and that was not needed at all.
Okay, so then next is Marquavius Huey. He was number 3. And again, there were 6 total. So now we're down to number 3. He had 19 charges. Okay, guys, he had 19. I think he was probably the second person in this indictment to have the most charges. I think there was one other guy who had more than him, but he was facing 3 life sentences plus 100 years. If he was convicted of all of these charges and sentenced to the maximum for each, 3 life sentences plus 100 years. And through the negotiations of his attorneys, and his attorneys were a father-son duo. First of all, father-son, black father-son. And when I went to court, they was stylish, okay? They were able to get this man from that many years down to 25 years total, 9 to be served in custody, 9 to be served on probation, and then 5 years suspended.
Wow.
100
years. And
3 life sentences plus 100.
Yeah.
And he got down to 9 to be served. And they take his he's already been in jail. What is it called?
Served.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Why did I say time served? Oh, I messed that up. Okay, so 9 to be served in jail, but they take into consideration the time served. So that will be docked. It won't be the full 9 because he's already served some. So credited. Thank you. The credited with time served. That's what I was trying to say.
And then good behavior, you're probably gonna get out sooner than that.
It was. I'm gonna play the clip because actually I think the way the judge said everything that I said, but she says it in a way that really kind of hits you.
And the number of charges that you, given the severity and the number of charges that you were facing, that had you been convicted of all of those charges at trial, you were looking at the possibility of 3 consecutive life sentences, plus I think about 100 years after that. So the fact that the state is recommending jointly with your attorneys that your total sentence be 25 years with 9 of those to serve is, it's frankly remarkable, and something that you should not take for granted or take lightly at all. And you have had a fine example next to you for the past 2 years of what somebody can do with their lives. So don't forget about that, and be the father that you need to be and that you ought to be to your very young children. They're still going to be very young when you get out. And please make sure that you abide by all your probationary conditions, because if you don't, then you're going to be back to see me. And because I recognize how much of a break you are getting right now, I'm probably not going to be as lenient if you come back before me again, because you are getting a huge opportunity to turn your life around, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so that's the sentence of the court, and I want to wish you good luck and good fortune. You can get through the next few years, and then you can have the rest of your life to do good work with.
Can you address the court?
Yes.
I want to thank the court and thank God. And I want to apologize to my kids, my family, and everybody who done supported me in this stressful process. And, I plan to do my time, come back, be a better man.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Your Honor. Thank you.
All right.
It even sounds like Whitaker got emotional. You know, you're hearing that and it's like you are like internally wanting to root for these guys so much. It's like, please don't mess up. You guys can do this. Like, you are getting such a massive break.
I don't know what they were talking about or what they had to do to get those stipulations in there.
Mm-hmm.
But congratulations to them,
man.
And this proves to you that a closed mouth don't get fed. So negotiate whatever you gonna negotiate. Because I mean, a life sentence by itself.
He had 3 consecutive.
Now you doing 15 serving 9 with time served.
It really
good behavior. Ain't no telling what else could come of it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's
I think
wow.
I think there's been a lot of learnings from watching this case, but seeing this part, I think, has been really, really good for people to see, because you see, in my opinion, you see a judge showing some grace and really giving some people some chances. And so if you mess up and you come back in front of her, there is no, oh, she should, or, oh, it is, you really had an opportunity and you just hope and pray that they recognize the opportunity and really take full advantage. So
yeah, because after this, there ain't no more of this sympathy or you grew up without this and you grew up without that. You come back now.
Yeah, it was.
You come back.
It was, and I was happy that he spoke. It was good. Okay, let's get to Thug, because this is what I want to talk about. Thug also, there was a deal, but his deal was a non-negotiated plea. which is basically, and I'm only going to give general descriptions because the recording is going to do it better than me. But basically, the both sides, right, Thug's team and the state, are engaged in these negotiations and are unable to come to an agreement on the plea, right? It's negotiations stop because they can't agree. And so then you can enter into a non-negotiated plea, and that is what Thug entered into. So he had count 1, which is RICO, and he pled, it was a NOLO plea. It was NOLO for count 1, RICO. He also, unlike everybody else in this indictment, he had count 56. He had it to himself, and that was for the leader of the gang charge. He was charged separately for being the leader of the gang. That's what the state was alleging. And so he also pled NOLO to being the leader of the gang. His count 57, which was participation in street gang activity, he pled guilty to that. He pled guilty to some drug charges and then the possession charges. There were 2. It was firearm and then machine gun. And again, those were from the search of the house, right?
Okay.
So he took the guilties for that. And Stara is in the chat, attorney Stara. And so actually she's saying for NOLO, she's saying it's not admitting guilt, but also not asserting innocence. Okay. So you're kind of like, okay, just charge me. So that is what he pled for count 1, count 56. And so what ends up happening, since they couldn't agree, is that the state's last offer, they went bananas and changed. Okay. So when they were negotiating, the last offer was 23 years in, no, it was, yes. Okay. It was 43 years total. 5 of those would be commuted to time served. So he's already been in jail. So he wouldn't, he would get 15 years probation and then 23 years backloaded. So what that meant in total, the reality would have been he would walk out of jail, and as long as he completed his probation without any mess ups,
15 years.
15 years of probation, as long as he completed that without messing up, the 23 years of confinement that's backloaded would go away. However, if you mess up, you just know you go into them jail. So that was their last negotiation. When they were negotiating, that was what they offered him, right? Because he declined it, when they go to court in front of the judge, they change it to 25 years in custody, 20 years on probation. So that whole time served and it can go away, backloaded. They were like literally 45 years total, and we want 25 years for Jeffrey Williams to be served in jail.
Wow.
Yeah. As a result of declining that last negotiation in court, the state has changed their mind and are now saying that Jeffrey Williams should go to jail for 25 years and then have 20 years on probation. That obviously did not happen. You can even tell from the way the judge is responding that she even says at one point, I am taking into account that the last offer that you submitted to him was that he would walk out today.
Yeah.
Because how do you switch? Like, that's such a massive change. So anyway, I don't even remember what's on this clip. I'm not going to play the whole thing because I want to get to the interview, but let me just play a little bit of it.
And the state is making a recommendation of 45 years with 25 to serve in custody, followed by 20 on probation, subject to the special requirements of 1615 for the gang statute. The total sentence was 43 years to serve, with the first 5 years in prison commuted to time served, followed by 15 years on probation, followed by 23 years in prison, which would have been served in confinement, except that if defendant had complied with the special conditions of probation imposed as part of this sentence, the backloaded portion of defendant's sentence would have been commuted. However, should defendant had violated any special condition of probation with the first within the first 15 years of his sentence, his probated sentence would have immediately been revoked, and he would have been required to serve the entire remainder of his sentence confined to the Georgia Department of Corrections.
So your understanding too, Mr.
Yes, Your
Steele
Honor.
and
It would
Mr.
have been,
Adams.
yes, Your Honor. Mr. Williams would have been released today for 15 years on probation. If he successfully completes that probation, then he would not have to go to custody. If he did not, he'd face probation revocation as well as 23 years, as the court said, backloaded in the Georgia prison system. But we could not come to terms on all the conditions that the district attorney was insisting upon.
Okay.
Selection initiation on January 4th, 2023. Verdict from the jury, and that's why he is.
Oh, so what Brian still continues to say is that it is worth playing, because he says Jeffrey Williams essentially wanted to go home. He was ready to go home. Brian still said, I was ready to keep going. I don't even all the way agree with us stopping right now because I think we're winning, and I was ready to keep fighting for him. So actually, let me play, because it is kind of funny to hear him express that very clearly.
Waiting for the conclusion of state's case 2022. This is 2.5 years waiting for the conclusion of state's case and a verdict from the jury, and that's why he is tendering this plea. I'm telling the court this, and the court knows when you came out the first time, it's very hard for Mr. Williams. I am not supportive of what we're doing right now. I'm not against it. But I told Mr. Williams, you okay with me saying this? Yes. I told Mr. Williams that I think we're winning the trial and we should go to verdict. But he told me I can't wait another 3 months if there is any possibility I could go home, because I have children that are hurting. I have things to do, and he has some medical issues that he would like to tend to. He eats out of a bag, Your Honor. He eats processed food only. He gained 75 pounds during trial. He's lost it since. But it is hard. You know, for me, it's only 3 more months. It's enjoyable, actually. I enjoy coming. It's not that enjoyable for Mr. Williams. He told me he wakes up. Can I say this? Yes. He wakes up every day, and it's another day in HE blank blank.
Wait! Brian still cracks me up
Why
because
he say blank blank?
why he say HE blank blank?
What?
Sir, you know who you're representing.
Oh,
You
my
can say
goodness.
hell. You can
Yes.
say it. Okay, let me keep going.
Honor.
So essentially, the total sentence is 40 years to serve the first 5 years in prison, but commuted to the time that you have already served, followed by 15 years on probation, followed then by the backloaded 20 years, which can be served in custody and will be served in custody if you are not successful on your probation. If you are successful in completing your 15 years probation, that will be commuted to time served.
So they left it in the hands of the judge, and she decided to give him 15 years probation. It was 5 years time served, 15 years probation, and he has 20 years backloaded. And as long as he does not stay in trouble, he does not have to serve that 20 years. It was a gamble and a risk. What he was mentioning that I didn't include in the clip, but it's all over the internet. So if you want to watch, check out my page because I have them all on there. But when trial first started, the judge came out and she said, okay, I understand we have a non-negotiated plea. And Jeffrey just sat there. He didn't respond. Nobody responded. And he just kind of looked. And so she said, do you guys need a second? The attorney say yes. And then they're still sitting there. They're talking to him. And so she says, we can recess because he kind of needs a moment. And Keith Adams is going to talk about that a little bit. But I just want to set you up for, you could tell that this was a gamble because the judge could have went a different way. You know, and Brian Steele was up there all but saying he's innocent, but we accepting guilt, which, sir, are you guilty or are you not guilty? And so when you are accepting a guilt, or you're accepting guilt, not the NOLOs, but you're accepting guilt, and Brian Steele had a dissertation of an hour talking about how everything is a lie in this case. So it was it could have went very, very differently. That said, I want to play this It's 8:16 minutes. I don't know if that's awkward to just listen to, but I hope you guys enjoy this. I have to say thank you again to Keith Adams for even doing this. It was early. I caught him and he was okay with it. So that is the setup for my conversation with Keith Adams. Let's
Hold on. I would like to also say 15 years probation
15 years probation.
is not a joke.
No, absolutely not.
Obviously, it's not jail time, but to be on your P's and Q's,
Absolutely.
especially being who he is and the environment that he's going to be in, because I'm quite sure he's still going to make music, probably going to be out there performing, doing his thing.
Yeah.
But to
They
stay
allowed him.
on the straight and narrow for 15 years after 2 years of being cool, oh, your guard, you might drop that guard down and you could, So I can only imagine 15 years is going to be,
Definitely going to be hard.
it's going to be hard.
But also, let me just say, because there were some special conditions of Jeffrey's plea. So the judge gave him 48 hours to get the heck out of Dodge. So he has to stay away from the Metro Atlanta area as defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. He cannot be in Metro Atlanta for the first 10 years of his probation. For the next 10 years, unless there is a wedding, funeral, graduation from high school, college, or graduate school, or medical emergency of immediate family members only. Those are the times that you can come to the city. And when you can come 24 hours before the event, and you must leave 48 hours after the event. Those are the periods in which you can be in town. Otherwise, my sir, you better get the heck out of Dodge.
I wonder if he can drive through it.
I wouldn't even try it. That don't seem like a good idea. He also is allowed to enter the Metro Atlanta area to make a live anti-gang and anti-gun violence presentation 4 times a year at a grade school, middle school, boys and girls club, or similar group. The presentation may include a benefit concert. She did say you can perform, and they may count towards his community service because he does have community service hours. He shall perform 100 hours of community service each year of his probation. And those 4 times a year events has to happen each year for 4 times a year. He has to do these events. He obviously cannot have contact with any member or associate of a criminal street gang who are not members of the defendant's immediate family. And he made clear in court that his brother, Quantavious Greer, is his blood brother. And he was one of the people indicted in this case. And he was like, can I talk to him? Because even though he's indicted, she said yes. And then Sergio Kitchens, also known as Gunna, they expressed that they have contractual obligations. They make music together. He wants to be allowed to continue making music, and she allowed that also. He cannot promote any criminal street gang activity on any social media platform, can't use hand signs, terminology, language, participate in anything, blah, blah, blah. So those are there are more, but those are the essential terms of his plea. And so now I will shut up and play it.
My first question was, did you sleep last night?
A little bit. It was a late night. We didn't leave out of court until sometime after 6, maybe close to 7, and then Brian and I had to go and get Jeffrey from the Fulton County Jail and turn him over to his folks.
Oh my goodness!
And then some stuff to do back at the office. So yeah, it was a late night. A little bit of sleep.
And what I am okay. So for everyone watching, we have all this adrenaline and energy, and what is the car ride? Are you in silence because you are taking in this moment, or were you just were you in work mode still?
You mean after we got him out?
Yeah.
You know what? We're just kind of coming down. It was Brian and I were engaged in a lot of different emotions. We wanted to continue on with this trial because we felt like we were winning this thing. And, there's nothing better than a 2-word resolution at the end, not guilty. But as always, it's the client's decision as to how to resolve it. And truth be told, Jeffrey is the one who's been sitting in the jail for the past 2.5 years. And so we were extremely excited that he was getting out. At the top of our priority for the past 2.5 years was bringing this man home. And so we were thrilled to be seeing him walk out of that Fulton County Jail
Yeah.
and go home. So it was an exciting moment, a little bit anticlimactic in that we really wanted to continue on with trial, but that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. This is a win.
Were you surprised by, well, actually, before we say that, can you explain a non-negotiated blind plea? I go by I'm not a lawyer, and so sometimes being able to properly put context to things, especially when a lawyer can do it versus me not a lawyer, is always helpful. So if you can explain that a little bit.
Sure. So it's best to start by explaining what a negotiated plea is. Okay. A negotiated plea is where the state and the defense get together, and we hammer out what we're going to plead to, if we're going to plead to, under what circumstances, what the sentence is going to be, what conditions they're going to be, and we agree to it. And essentially, we put it up in front of the judge and say, Judge, this is what we've agreed to, and we're asking you to follow this recommendation. That's negotiated, and if the judge does it, that's good. It's over. Mm. Sometimes the state and the defense just can't reach common ground, and that was the case here. The truth is we've not been on common ground since day one, and they've not been negotiating and dealing in good faith, and so there was never any way that we were going to come to any sort of consensus or agreement. And so a non-negotiated plea is where the state puts up their recitation and their recommendation and says, Judge, this is, if he's pleading guilty to these charges, this is what we want you to sentence him to. We would then make a plea to the court and say, we're pleading guilty, or we're pleading nolo, or whatever it is, and this is what we're asking you to do. And the judge makes a decision. And in a non-negotiated plea, the defendant does not have the right to withdraw his plea after the judge says what she's going to sentence him to. Now, there's a caveat to that. So if hypothetically the state says we want him to serve 20 years, and the defense says we want probation, if the judge goes above 20 years and say, you know what, I'm going to accept the plea, but I think he needs 25 years, you can withdraw the plea. If it's above the state's recommendation, you can withdraw.
Oh, interesting.
But if the judge says anything in between where we are from probation to 20 years in that hypothetical, you cannot withdraw. And so there was a lot of angst here, not knowing exactly what the judge was going to do. But we've been watching how the court has ruled on motions, how the court has dealt with us and the state, and we thought that the judge had been fair in terms of his rulings over the course of the past number of months since Judge Whitaker got on the case and became the new arbiter, so to speak. So we felt as comfortable as you can feel letting her make the decision.
Wow.
It was a gamble. Wow. It was a gamble, but it was not a gamble that came without a lot of thought and a lot of back and forth. You probably saw that at one point the judge came out on the bench and she said, "Okay, you guys ready to go?" And there was just silence because Mr. Williams had not yet decided that he wanted to do it. We took a while, and then we came back and got it done.
Were you surprised? First of all, thank you for that clarification. There were a ton of questions about that, and of course, it's like legal social media, so no one was able to quite answer it. So that was really helpful. Were you surprised by the sentence that she gave? Because I think even in the proposal done by, you guys, it included, I think, house arrest and an ankle monitor, and I didn't see any of that in the disposition. And so were you surprised by the sentence?
Yes and no. And let me explain both of those. When we asked the court to entertain the plea and a sentence, we didn't want to come in front of the court and say, okay, just give him probation and that's it. Because you ask for something that's not reasonable, and then the judge just ignores you altogether, and you probably end up in a place you don't want to end up. So we wanted to put something in front of the court that had some meaning, that had some teeth, that assured the court and the community that Mr. Williams was accepting responsibility, right, and that he was holding himself to or asking to be held to a standard where he could make amends. And so we put some real conditions there. And frankly, some of those things are things that Jeffrey had always done anyway. The concerts, the benefits, donations to charitable organizations, he'd done that. So we didn't have a problem with that. So were we surprised that the judge did what she did? Not necessarily. We weren't surprised because we'd seen how the judge had moved over the course of the past couple months. And to be honest, we know, and this is my opinion, we're of the opinion that the judge was just kind of fed up with the state because she was able to see that they were operating in a way that really wasn't, in good faith. And so the recommendations that they made was silly. To walk into court admitting that earlier that day, you had put an offer on the table where he would go home today, but you just had a million conditions attached to it, and then all of a sudden when we say, well, we're not comfortable with those conditions, all of a sudden you're asking the court to sentence him to 20, 25 years in prison. That's just silly, and it diminished their credibility, and I think enhanced ours.
One of the things that you're talking about, even just the switch from Judge Glanville, the previous judge, to Judge Whitaker, when Jeffrey was speaking, he talked about Judge Whitaker being the best thing to happen to this case in terms of fairness, which I think for many of us watching, we felt that, but to hear him say that, and I think for me, obviously, I can only speak for myself, it was just confirmation that, these guys are obviously, these are their lives, they're obviously paying attention, and they recognize the weight and the severity of what's going on, and some may call it mistakes, some may call intentional, but the things that were happening from the outside, it looks like an indication that these guys are a major part of this as well. Was that your experience?
That was absolutely my experience. Jeffrey has been amazingly involved in this case from the beginning. All right. I mean, we would meet often, and I mean often. We talk on the phone often. To say that we're in court all day long and then we still talk later on is surprising. But he was engaged. He knew everything. He knew all of the evidence. We went over it with him. He was able to offer his insight and his thinking on, strategy as well. So he was engaged. But more importantly, he was very much aware of how the court was handling this case. And, whether it was Jeffrey or any of the other defendants or attorneys, no one wanted the court to do anything special for us. Right? We just wanted it to be fair. And, for months and months, we're sitting there, we're being hammered by dishonesty, by late disclosure of information, by purposefully doing things that any attorney should know you ought not to do, trying to influence the jury in inappropriate ways. And we're sitting there, and all we're asking is for the court to address that. We didn't see that it was being addressed. We didn't feel as though it was properly being addressed. But then when Judge Whitaker took over the case, she was much more respectful of time frame and people's times and calendars and so forth. And she took things seriously, and she was a very smart judge. And, whether you have any feelings about the judge's temperament, or whether people thought she might have been a little snippy or what have you, we can deal with that as long as the rulings are fair, and we found that to be the case.
To that point, there were a number of cross-examinations that I recapped and enjoyed, done by you for sure, but one of the moments that I remember distinctly is there was an exchange with the state. It was Judge Glanville and maybe it was even Brian Steele, and you walked up and you said, "Please do something." Like, "Judge, do something. We need you to do something." And so, anyway, it's just what came to my mind as you were talking about some of the things that have happened over the case. The dishonesty. I think you even said she lied. I think you outright said she lied.
Yeah, and she did.
And so seeing that for, again, all of the legal, non-legal scholars who have tapped in was just surprising. It really uncovered a lot of things, I think, for a lot of people. How do you feel about the social media? There's obviously like traditional media, but I think a lot of social media and new media is what we're calling it, took interest and started covering this case. What is your thoughts about that? How did that feel? Or were you even tapped in? Did you even recognize all of that was happening?
You know what? I was very much aware that there were a lot of people watching this thing on streaming, on social media, which is a good thing. I'm always of the opinion that the more insight people have into the functioning of the justice system, the better. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for folks to see how things work and sometimes how they don't work. What standards people are held to and whether they actually live up to those standards or not. And I think a lot of people saw that. and it was. I think that's a good thing. You know, it's from time to time I would log on to the stream and just take a look at the chat, because sometimes you kind of want to see how the evidence is hitting. And I got to tell you, there's some hilarious people on that chat.
Aren't there?
but you've got to have a pretty strong sense of self, because there's also a lot of criticism going on that chat, and I've heard myself called everything on the chat, from Wesley Snipes to DMX to you name it. But people are very insightful, and I the millions of people who are watching now have a better understanding, I think, of how the system works, and that's a good thing.
Is there something you think should change as a result of this case?
Nothing that's not already in place. You know, to be honest, people know how they're supposed to conduct themselves, attorneys, and prosecutors have a lot of power, and their standards by which they're supposed to hold themselves, and their disclosures. Everyone knows what it is to try a case and try it fairly, and no one asks for anything other than, let's just try the case fairly and let the chips fall where they may. And so I hope, my hope is that attorneys looking at this case see it for what it is, and that they maybe recognize that there's some things that they do and that they could do better, and maybe they learn from it. I think they will. I mean, I've had dozens and dozens of attorneys and my colleagues reach out to me, in support. Share some opinions, share some research. It's been very instructive, and it's been a great thing. I'm actually heading down to I'm on the state of Georgia State Bar Board of Governors, so I'm heading down to a meeting this weekend, and I expect I'll get an earful of attorneys around the state. Hopefully mostly good, but if there's some criticism there, I'd love to hear it too. So we'll see.
Are you expecting to still show up some of the days in court? Because obviously Shannon is still left, and Diamante Kendricks as well. Can we expect to see you pop up?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let me say something. One of the best things, out of this case, and it happened when I tried the Atlanta cheating scandal RICO case a number of years ago too, is that you get close. You get close with the attorneys, and we were already close. I've known Max for a long time. He's a great attorney. I just met Doug Weinstein recently, but he is a fantastic guy, and we have worked together. We all made a pact that, look, we're going to help each other. No one was going to hurt anybody else, and that held true. And so anytime, I think you saw it. Anytime, it may not necessarily have had anything to do with our client, but if there was something going on that needed to be addressed, somebody could be counted on to jump up and jump in and say something. And that's going to continue. So I'm be down there. If Max needs some help, I'll be in there. I'll be in there helping him. If Doug needs some help, same thing. If they send me a text here in the office, say I need a case to stand for this proposition, hell, I'm gonna drop what I'm doing and find that case and email it over to them. So they're not alone. And the other thing that they're saying as well, I don't know how people feel about the clients, the defendants. People may have their opinion based on what they've heard about, Shannon or Diamante or anybody else, but we've gotten to know these guys. You can't spend that amount of time with people without recognizing them for the persons that they are. I like all of these guys. I really do. And so I'm vested in their success.
Okay, my last question. Can we expect to see you at the first Young Thug concert?
Absolutely. Better have some backstage passes too.
Yeah.
If that boy know like I know. I know. You know what? There's another Keith Adams floating around. My son, Keith Adams Jr. and he has already put in his request.
I love it.
He is the biggest Young Thug fan. And so, yeah, you'll probably see two Keith Adamses floating around at the next Young Thug concert.
That's
so definitely. Yes, indeed.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this. I'll definitely, be continuing to stay on this case, making my daily recaps. I'm just as invested in the outcome for sure. So thank you again. I appreciate this.
You're welcome. And please continue doing what you're doing. You do a fantastic job. I'm very impressed with the production that you do and your coverage, and
Thank you.
And I think I said it before in an email, but I really do mean it, that you're doing a tremendous service, and you do it very well. So congratulations. Keep doing what you're doing. Take care of baby girl. Take care of the family. And
Yes.
if you have any questions, feel free to reach out, okay?
I will. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You as well. Bye-bye.
All right.
There it is.
That's a home run.
Except I,
Knock
you know,
that
the
out of
one
the park.
question I'm so, well, two questions I wish I would have asked.
What's that?
Who does he want to play him in the movie? When he said Wesley Snipes, how come I didn't take that opportunity to say, who do you want to play you in the movie? Because you know it's coming. And then the second question is, was he about to go to jail the same day Brian Steele was? Because I remember him going up to that podium and saying, well, Judge, I feel the same way he does. And Glanville wasn't trying to have it. But I should have asked him. I forgot to ask him. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you again to Keith Adams for giving me that interview. It was amazing to chat with him. It was I think just a good conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it wasn't too long. I could have talked to him forever, but I know he was about to get on the road and he had things going on. So yeah.
That was surprising.
Yeah.
Y'all, I get up like at 6 a.m. to go work out. And that's what Mel was doing when I was in the weight room.
Listen,
she was like, guess what I was like, hold up. While I was, girl, you be on it. Be on it.
That said, Shannon Stillwell and Diamante Kendrick are still defendants in this trial. They rejected the plea offers that were offered to them. And so that is continuing. And so, like I said on the call, I am invested in the actual trial. I'm curious to see if there are going to be any changes, how even in, again, the legal aspect of how do you pivot the case from the state's perspective? How are they going to pivot now? It shouldn't take another 6 months. You have two defendants. So I'm really curious, all just for the learning of it all, of like what happens now. So I'll still be tapped in, still be doing recaps. Thank you guys for watching. I think that's it.
Oh yeah, that's it.
All right.
Court is adjourned.